Hang on just a second, guys. I'll be right back. So, give me just a second, guys. I've got to figure out why my webcam isn't working. Okay. Well, Okay, well, there we go. Yeah, I don't know what the heck's going on with this thing. Good to see you guys finally. Sorry it took so long to get on board. There we go. That should get everything up to date here. Alrighty. Let me get everything adjusted here. There we go. Okay. Hey everybody. Sorry about that. Um, as some of you know, I used to have 3 computers, and now I only have 2. So the big nice one that I usually use for video games and such is now what I record on because the other one decided to shit the bed. But you know, it is what it is. So I had to reset everything up on this one, and it's not used to hosting live streams yet. So there were some definite hiccups. Anybody? Anybody got static? I can try to plug it back in again. Been having trouble with this cord on my microphone. I have to unplug it sometimes. It's old and it's been through a few moves. Sound coming through all right? Hang on. Okay. I have to bring up the live stream on another one too because it usually doesn't work well. Okay. Well, I think we're all good. Alrighty. So let's I wanted to do it when we first got here, but I guess 15 minutes gives a few more people time to get in too. I wanted to talk about our upcoming contest. I wanted to do it in July, but my workload's been a little crazy lately with recording stuff, and I think we're going to push it to August. So, for those of you who don't know, and I'll put up a thing about it in the community tab, we're doing a little writing contest where I'm going to accept stories, horror stories preferably, and we'll judge them, and there will be a winner, and the winner will get a free book. We'll have to get together over email or something so I can get your address to send it out. But we will be doing a writing Crib Notes. We're doing a writing contest. I'll be picking the winner. I might leave it up to you guys. I probably will post them if you guys are comfortable with that. I might even narrate them. I don't know, and let you guys help me pick a winner. And yeah. Winner will get a signed copy of a book. And I mean, I have like a bunch. So there will be lots of prizes. We'll probably do it, I think, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. So we'll do 5 months worth of winners and writing stuff. And in that time, I'll probably read some of them on the channel, too, so that'll be fun. Is it? I'm not... Hang on. No? Hold on. Sometimes you gotta seat this thing just right. Um, so yeah, um, I'll put up a thing in the community tab with all the stuff in it. But basically, what it amounts to is, you guys will send me stories, and I'll read through them, and I'll pick a winner, or if you guys are comfortable with it, I'll read them on the channel, and then I'll ask some of you guys to vote on your favorite. Like, I'll narrow it down to top 3, and then I'll ask you guys to, pick your favorite there. Oh, nice. And Then if you win, I'll get your address and I'll send you a book. We'll do it through email, but if a lot of you are on the Discord, you can always come over on Discord, and we can submit through there, and we can workshop and stuff. Well, Lou, you've heard some of my stories. As long as, like, they're not rated X, like, we tend to run a little fast and loose over here with YouTube monetization rules sometimes. Who is it? Nicholas Leonard has a few that have pushed it a few times where I've had to kind of ease them back a little bit because they were definitely going to get me demonetized. But yeah, so that's the plan. I may even do a big one for Halloween. I haven't quite decided yet. We may do a couple for Halloween, but I'll keep you guys updated on that. Just in the interim, get your stories in. My Gmail is on the channel. I really need to get. You know what? I will post all of it in a community tab post. The email you need, the Discord, the rules, all of that after the live stream, so that we can go ahead and get that going, and everybody knows what we're supposed to be doing. And good luck to everybody. I've already got some stories from a few of you, but it should be a lot of fun, I think. And that's gonna be August, September, October, November, December. For the next 5 months, we'll run story contests. Like I said, you get to pick whichever book you want. By that point, the Douglas Gage book should be up. I'm going to submit the manuscript Monday for what do you call it? Looking at, I guess, so they can go over it. But they've never kicked any of my stuff back, so should be fine. Oh no. Well, like I said, if it's too racy or if it's gonna get me demonetized, I'll say something. But it should be fine. Like I said, I've had a lot of stuff up there that's kind of pushed it. The other thing, as some of you have seen, is the first audiobook that I've professionally narrated. It's not mine, it's somebody else's. Went up on Audible? Yeah, Audible. Grabbed it. But I'm planning to do an audiobook format of the Douglas Gage book. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Excuse me. The Douglas Gage book should be up for inspection Monday. So it usually takes about 24 hours, and then they send it back, and they're like, yeah, cool. So that should be available on Amazon pretty quick. I'm going to have to print out some copies to send to my Ghostly Reader tier people. So if you are a Ghostly Reader tier, and you haven't sent me an updated address yet, go ahead and send me an updated address through Patreon. That way I know your book's going to the right place. But yeah, that's my plan after getting that up, is to do an audiobook form of it. And I don't have anybody to narrate it. I'll do it myself. So it should come up pretty quick. It shouldn't take me long to narrate it. And that should be available before October, because I don't know what my workload's going to look like. I've got requests for other narrations. So yeah. Have I got Discord on here? I think I do. No, apparently I don't. Or I'd post you guys a link there. If anybody's got a link to the Discord, go ahead and post it. Or, hang on, I can just get it off my phone. But yeah, so, a lot of cool stuff to look forward to. We've got the Douglas Gage book coming up. We've got contests coming up. We've got all kinds of cool stuff coming up. So it's going to be a big year, even though it is July. I mean, it's going to be a big 6 months. Let me post this for you guys. No, I need the other one. There it is. Okay, yeah. No, I just want to watch it. It's so weird about this kind of thing. I don't know. If anybody's got the link to the Discord, post it, or I'll post it in the message later when we talk about the contest, so you can get it there. But yeah, that's what we got going on. So a lot of cool stuff. Alrighty, without further ado, I know you guys are here to listen to the stories, so let me get some stories going here. Uh-oh. Yeah, I think I'm the only one that's allowed to hyperlink. You know what? Hang on. Oh, okay. Well, that's cool, because I have another one. Alright. Blondie, you are now officially a standard moderator, so post that link if that's what you want to do. I'm pretty sure it'll let you do it now. Oh yeah, Blondie's always here, so she can totally mod. Oh yeah, we were doing stories. Scatterbrained me, I swear. Alrighty. So, let's see what we got cooking up for Monday. I want to do at least 4 tonight. You guys know who I am with that. You know what? I'm going to let you guys pick. Do you want a new Deep Woods of Rayford story on Monday? Or do you want a new Blacksite 12 story on Monday? Cast your votes in the chat. Do you want a Rayford Woods story, or do you want a new Blacksite 12 story? Get those votes in, and let's see what we get. Cast your votes. Oh, we'll say first 1 to 3. We got 1 and 1. That's 2 for Blacksite. Oh, that's 3 for Blacksite. So Blacksite will be our winner. We'll get a Rayford story some other time, I'm sure. I've got more of them. Let's see. Where were we on the Blacksite? I think we had just done... Yes, we were in midterms. That's right. So, let's get back to our midterm shenanigans here. Alrighty. And this one is the next part of our midterms at the Blacksite 12. So, I hope you enjoy. All right, Rebecca. Tell us what you see. Rebecca was in the room with the doctor's chair again. They had counted down from 10. Hang on a second. Coming in a little louder than usual there on the thing. That's weird. All right, Rebecca. Tell us what you see. Rebecca was in the room with the doctor's chair again. They had counted down from 10, and now she was laying half in and half out of a daze. The only saving grace was that she knew that Hammershoal hadn't been the one to put her under. The minder, some new woman she didn't know, had hit a button, and his voice had droned out of the old if I could talk. Oh, wait a minute. That's what's up. That's weird. It sounds like it's recording through my webcam. Yeah, it does. It sounds like it's recording to my webcam. It shouldn't be doing that. Okay. Check, check. Check, check. What in the hell? Check, check. Check, check. Huh. I don't know. That's weird. Maybe I'm just hearing things. All right, Rebecca. Tell us what you see. That's weird. Rebecca was in the room with the doctor chair again. They had counted down from 10, and now she was laying half in and half out of a doze. The only saving grace was that she knew Hammershoal hadn't been the one to put her under. The minder, some new woman she didn't know, had hit a button, and his voice had droned out the old catechism that would send her into a receptive state. That was fine, she guessed. Less intrusive, but still terrible. Just knowing that the little doctor was capable of putting her under made her uncomfortable, but she tried to keep those feelings walled off. Try that one again. But she tried to keep those feelings walled off. But she tried to keep those feelings walled off and far away as she went about her midterm. She didn't want any distractions getting in her way. "I'm in the kindergarten," she said, her voice sounding dreamy. "It's night time, and I'm walking the halls." The scritch-scratch of a pencil was audible through the relay before the woman asked her to go on. "I can see Daniel in the media room. He's drinking a Sprite. His hands are shaking. He looks like he's been crying." "Are you there with him?" Or, "No, I'm like a ghost. He doesn't see me, and I go on after a while." "What else do you see?" the woman asked, making notes. As Rebecca spoke, "There are 3 teachers in the cafeteria. One of them is Mr. Cutter, but 2 of them are people I don't know. Mr. Cutter is smoking a cigar and drinking whiskey from a bottle. It has a turkey on it. He and the other adults are talking, but I can't tell what they're saying. They laugh sometimes. I don't think all of them are teachers, though. I think some of them are the people that bring us here. There's a woman in the library, too, that's unfamiliar. She's reading something and crying. I'm not sure why. There had been a weird noise on that rel. There had been a weird noise at that. There had been a weird noise at that revelation, but the woman giving the assessment had tried to stifle it. "What else?" She sniffled a little. "What else do you see?" "The gym. It's empty, and the equipment looks spooky. The green band room, the blue band room, all of them so quiet and dark. It's strange around here at night. people exist in this quiet place, but they seem to do it carefully, like they might wake someone. Give me just a second, guys. Okay, sorry about that. All right, where were we? Like they might wake someone up. She had wanted to say something, but had thought better of it. Rebecca, the voice said, stopping as it tried to find the best way to continue. Are these things that you saw, or things that happened to you? Rebecca wasn't sure exactly what she meant. It always happens to me. It just takes a while sometimes. Excuse me. That's not quite what I meant, the woman asked. Is this something you think will happen, or something you saw happen? Rebecca wasn't sure. She wanted to talk about it too much. What if they got mad that she hadn't told them about her change in powers? What if they hurt her, or punished her for not telling? It was like the lamp she had broken when she was 8. Her parents had gotten more angry about the fact that she hadn't. Her parents had gotten more angry about the fact that she'd swept it under the end table than the breaking of the lamp. Still, this place was different. She didn't know if the rules here were the same. I don't know, Rebecca hedged. Things are funny here sometimes. I can't really say. She could. God, she could. But she didn't dare tell this woman, this stranger, about what had come next. Okay, she said. Anything else? No, Rebecca. No, Rebecca said, though it sounded much too fast even for her. No, that was it. I floated around a little more, and then I woke up. You woke up screaming, as I recall, the woman said. You were screaming because of a floating dream? It changed suddenly, Rebecca said, hoping it sounded as good to the woman as it did to her. Suddenly I was falling through the ground. I just fell and fell and fell, and then I woke up screaming. The woman made a sound, an unimpressed sound, and the scratching went on. Well, that is something. Sounds like your powers are growing, which is good. Strong powers make strong students. You can wake up now, Rebecca. The midterm is over. Rebecca jolted a little, used to being brought out of these gradually, and sat up on the table. That's it? That was all of it? The woman clicked a button and then stepped out through a small door. She was pretty, Rebecca supposed, with long brown hair and green eyes, with smile lines at the corners. She looked familiar, too, though Rebecca couldn't be sure. She was a stranger, but not really. Rebecca looked at the shape of her face, the green eyes and the joking smile, but it was something else that caught first before she could put it together. You were the one crying in the library that night, she said, unable to stop herself. The woman nodded, the motion unsure. Yep, you called it right, kiddo. I'm just here for the midterms, but this place brings back memories sometimes. You were a student here too? Rebecca asked, as she walked out of the little room with her. I was, and I can tell you that it was certainly an experience. It wasn't all good, but it helped me become what I am today, and that's something. Someone who snatches children, Rebecca wanted to say but didn't. I know that tests are scary, but don't give it too much thought, the woman said. You did fine, Rebecca. Go take a rest for the day. You've earned it. Rebecca thanked her and headed off into the kindergarten. The weight that had suddenly fallen from her made her want to go finish Eclipse before the others got out. Rebecca suddenly felt like if she got any lighter, she might float right off the ground, and she wanted a good book before she spent all day hovering near the ceiling. We're reading a new Blackside story if you're just joining us. It's part 6, I believe, so pull up a chair. It's just getting good. Let's see what I've missed here. Baked tater wedges can be a little difficult sometimes, Lou. Oh, no, Scarlett, we don't do that here. We try to stay as far away from politics as we can. The world's crazy enough. I like to give you guys a quiet place to just listen to some stories when I can. Well, we're going to move on to the next part then. Another maze, Gerald said, looking up at the strange man as he stood at the beginning of the new course. It would appear so, kid. Humor me, Matt. It would appear so, kid. It would appear so, kid. Humor me, though. This is my first time watching you run it. The man was a stranger to Gerald, one of the beefy snatchers that had probably brought a couple of his friends here. He was running the midterm. He'd made that pretty clear, and he was a lot less personable than the little doctor. He wouldn't give anything away, and Gerald had tried. It seemed Gerald would have to lead this one blind. Well, not blind. The string made it pretty clear where he was supposed to go. Just head in, kid. Don't worry. I've been told there are fail-safes to keep you from dying. Well, isn't that reassuring? Gerald mumbled, heading into whatever this was as his guide headed off to some control room somewhere. Gerald had a pretty easy time on the first couple of turns, but on the third divergence, he started hearing something. He thought it might be an animal at first, but as he began to follow the noises instead of the strings, he realized it was crying. Somebody was really wailing, and he came around the corner suddenly to find a girl in a white uniform sitting in the fetal position. She was pretty upset about something, and when Gerald called out to her, she jumped and picked up her tear-stained face. "Who are you?" she sniffed. "I'm Gerald. I'm with the Blue Band class. Who are you?" "I'm Cindy. I'm a white band class, I guess." Gerald walked a little closer, not sure what to make of her. Was this some new ploy that Hammarskjöld was trying out? What was he playing at here? Surely he didn't think Gerald was going to lose his head over a girl. Did he? Cindy was pretty, Gerald supposed. She had long red hair, freckles, piercing green eyes, and a little nose that set just above her full lip. But Gerald had never really been interested in much beyond the strings. "Do you need some help getting out of here?" Gerald asked, offering her a hand as he assumed she was part of the midterm somehow. She nodded, taking his hand and letting him help her to her feet. The second their hands touched, Gerald felt a pulse of current run through him. It wasn't some lovesick spark either. Gerald staggered a little as a galvanizing bolt shot up his arm, and his teeth chattered uncontrollably for a count of 5, as Cindy looked at him in confusion. "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" The feeling was gone just as quickly as it had struck, and Gerald was left with nothing but the memory of it. "No," he said, looking at his hand as it lay in hers. "No, I guess not. Here, let me help you out of here. I have an ability that makes this kind of thing easy. All we have to do is follow the..." But when he looked down, Gerald felt cold dread fill the place. The lightning had left in him. Yeah. The lightning had left in him. The strings were gone. The strings were gone. "What the hell?" Gerald whispered, and his hand slipped out of hers momentarily. As it did, the strings came back. It was weird, 1 minute gone, the next there, but the colors of them were faded as well. The red could have been orange, the orange could have been yellow, and the green and blue were suddenly harder to distinguish. "Is something wrong?" she asked, looking concerned. "Something is going on with my powers," he said, and as he glanced at her, Gerald thought of something that he should have before. "What is your ability, Cindy?" Cindy shrugged. "I don't know. Miss Gabby says I'm a dampener, but I don't know what that means. Mostly they just teach me to sit quietly. Not like I needed help with that." Gerald turned to look at the strings and saw that the colors were coming back again. Taunt. Try that one again. We're reading a Black Site 12 story if you're just joining us, so pull up a seat. The kids are having midterm. Taught her to sit quietly. Maybe if she wasn't quiet, some of her dampening was lessened. "Why is that?" he asked, walking towards the green string and waiting for her to follow. If he kept a few steps ahead of her and kept her talking, then he could make out this. Then he could make it out of this. "I was raised in a very religious household," Cindy told him, almost proudly. "My dad often said that children should be seen and not heard. I had a lot of experience just sitting and thinking quiet thoughts. Sometimes—" She stopped talking and looked dreamily at the left-hand path. The left-hand path with an orange string running down it. Gerald led them right instead and prompted her to go on. Sometimes if I just sat quietly and didn't draw attention to myself, it was like they couldn't see me. I almost felt like they forgot I was there when I did that, and it kept me out of trouble. Some of my brothers and sisters had trouble being quiet, and they got whoopings a lot. I rarely ever got whoopings. Sometimes I think my parents forgot I was there at all." Blue string left, blue string right. Avoid the red string to the left, green string to the left. But as he hang it. As she lapsed into silence again, Gerald found the colors were hard to see. There we go. "Why do you say so?" he asked, trying to keep her talking. "Well," she said, sounding uncomfortable, talking quite this much, "sometimes they would forget to set out a plate for me." Hang on. Did I? No, I didn't mute that. Okay. Sorry, sometimes I'm hearing an echo and I'm trying to figure out if that's me or what's going on with that. Alright, hang on. Set out a plate. Set out a plate for me, and then Mama would smack her forehead and say she was getting so forgetful. Sometimes they would forget special days. Sometimes they would forget me at home. Once they forgot me and went to church, and I was left at home all day by myself. They returned that night, and when they saw me eating leftovers, they suddenly remembered that I existed, and they were furious at me for skipping church. They didn't want to hear about how they had left me in bed. They didn't want to hear how they had left without me. I got the worst whooping of my life, and was grounded for a month. Blue, blue, green. Stopped and looked between the orange and the red before choosing the orange. He put a hand out as they entered a hallway, the floor dropping out to reveal a black hole, and Gerald helped her cross as she kept talking. That had been close, and to him, both the strings had looked reddish. This was tough, tougher than it had ever been, but Gerald kept Cindy talking so he could see the way. "It sounds like your family was as bad as mine." Oh no, Cindy insisted, and as her voice went up, the strings came into view like they always had. They were wonderful. Me and my siblings had each other, and we always watched out for the littler ones. We loved to sing and pray, and it was nice to have a church family around us. Daddy was just doing what he thought was right, what God said was right, and he was ignoring and beating children, Gerald said, cutting in. That's not right, no matter how you justify it. Spare the rod, spoil the child, Cindy intoned. He was bringing us up right. We knew how to act, and we knew how to behave, and that... Gerald tuned her out as they went. He was following the blue string now, their course pretty apparent, but as it shifted from red to orange... Orange to red. But as it shifted from orange to red, Gerald came to a crossroads. Cindy was still chattering like a squirrel, but Gerald was focused on... But Gerald was focused on the strings. Right or left, it made no difference. They were both fire engine red. And then Cindy, he said, and she stopped talking all at once. I need you to do me a favor. What's that? She asked, the strings fading as she got quieter. I need you to follow close behind me and run like your life depends on it. Can you do that? He had an idea, but he wouldn't know if it worked until he tried. Sure, she said, sounding nervous. When he took her hand, Gerald felt a small bolt run through him, and the strings were gone when he looked down. Now, he shouted, and the two of them took off. The hallway erupted like some kind of lethal funhouse. Fire shot from the walls, spikes came from the ground, arrows flew from the ceiling, and the kids ran through it like they were no more than noonday showers. Gerald wasn't sure it was going to work, was prepared to be killed at any moment, but as the spike went harmlessly through him, he looked back to see Cindy with her eyes closed and her mouth moving in silent prayer. Gerald almost laughed, but it would have probably broken whatever spell had been going on. It was as if they had become ghosts, the spikes and fire forgetting they existed, just as her parents had. And when they came to the end of the corridor, they didn't have a scratch on them. Gerald breathed a sigh of relief. We did it, he chuckled, hugging her close as he danced in place. We did it! I knew God would bring us through, Cindy said, hugging him back. But Gerald wasn't so sure. He was pretty sure the only person that had gotten them to the other side was a scared little girl who needed a little more faith in herself. We are reading a Black Site 12 story, if you're just joining us. Ooh. Let's see here. Oh, we still got a full house, dang. Alrighty, let's go on to... Oh, you gotta be kidding me. I forgot to finish Dunstan's part of this. God, I'm losing my mind. Hang on a tick. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the heck's going on with this thing. Well, what the hell? Ah. Okay, there we go. Um, where was I when I went out? Does anybody remember? Or do I just need to start over? Mm. Did we start the Kashmir story yet? Or, like, when did I go out exactly? Does anybody remember? I can start the story over again. Thanks, guys. I'm not sure what happened there. I was getting a lot of reverb on my end, and I kind of swapped over to something else. So I'm not entirely sure where I lost you guys at there. Oh, no. Okay, well, let me start the Kashmir story over again, because I was 2 pages deep on that when I apparently fuzzed out. So, that's a mess. Okay, let's try this again then. Alrighty. You know what? I'll just... Hang on. Gotta read it again anyway, so... Yeah. So apparently I forgot to write the last part of the story for Black Site 12. Um, I'll have to... So that'll be a surprise on Monday when you guys, when you guys, when you guys hear it, I guess. Um, but yeah, the last part of that was that they made it through the test, so that's cool for that. We're gonna move on to a Kashmir story, I guess. God, tonight's recordings have been plagued with problems. All right, this one is called "The Arrival of the Ragged Traveler." So, it's our Kashmir story this week. So I hope you guys like it. Wayne. Wayne. Wayne sat up, wiping the sleep from his eyes as he looked around. He hadn't been working for the Kashmir intrigue long, about a month and a half, and this was his afternoon routine. Kashmir was a tiny little town. The paper only needed 3 reporters and a copy editor, and his afternoons had been spent napping and still getting paid for it. Wayne was usually responsible for traffic reports, police blotter content, and sports scores, and such things usually only filled his day until lunchtime. Today, however, it seemed that things had changed. "What's up, boss?" he said, looking at Mr. Pace as he stood impatiently behind him. "Gabriella's called out. She's going to be out till next Tuesday, and we need you to take her workload." Wayne held the sigh, but just barely. Gabby was one of the oldest writers for the paper. She had been there since the paper had been called the Kashmir Crier, and she was the one who wrote about the big events. Holiday celebrations, the dead hikers in the woods who sometimes showed up, the people who appeared on the buses sometimes, and so much more. If he was taking her workload, then he was going to have to step it up. "Okay, what's she got going on this week?" he asked, wiping drool off his chin. "I sent you an email, but there's a big one that you need to attend tomorrow. Get your stuff together and be ready. Maybe..." "Because I need a full report when you get back." Wayne nodded, letting his boss walk off as he opened the email and got to work. An hour later, he was sighing loud enough to make Tracy look up over his cubicle. An hour later, he was sighing loud enough to make Tracy look up over his cubicle. Yeah. An hour later, he was sighing loud enough to make Tracy look up over his cubicle. "What's going on? I don't think I've ever seen you do that much work the whole time you've been here." "Hardy har," Wayne said. "No, it's Gabby's workload this week. She's got a lot on her plate. Garden Society judging, the store opening for the Cashmere Sundries, the elementary school's annual spring concert, and..." Wayne squinted at something in the email. "What is the arrival of the Ragged Traveler?" Tracy smiled, but Wayne didn't think the smile was entirely normal. He'd seen people look that way at church. He'd seen a date once that looked that way after some really mind-blowing sex, and it was 5 parts ecstasy and 5 parts religious experience. "Oh, man, is that tomorrow? I can't believe it's been a year already." "Yeah, but what is it?" Wayne asked, getting a little flustered as the look continued to spread over Tracy's face. "What? How can you not know about the Ragged Traveler?" "Trey, I've only been in Cashmere a few months, and I've never heard of anything like this outside of town." "Oh yeah, I forgot. You haven't been here very long." "Well, go tomorrow and experience it. You'll get it then." "But what the hell is it?" Wayne asked, getting really frustrated with all this vague nonsense. "Go. Set up on Main Street. Get a good spot. Be there before 8. You'll want to see it, trust me. It only happens once a year. You'll... Well, I won't say any more about it. It's something that has to be experienced." Tracy went back to his work, but Wayne found it hard to get back to his. He went to bed later thinking about it, but the more he learned, the less he seemed to know. The boss had come out of his office towards the end of the day to remind him and Tracy that the office would be closed the next day for the arrival of the Ragged Traveler. He told Wayne that he wanted the story before day's end tomorrow and needed it in his email before the paper went to print at 9. And when Wayne asked him what it was, the boss got the same look on his face as Tracy. "That's right. It's your first time. Get a good seat. Make sure you record it. Don't videotape it, though. It'll frig up anything you try to record with it. And enjoy it, kid. The Ragged Traveler only comes once a year, and it's something that's best experienced in person." Wayne had seen the banners and the flyers on the way home, too. They hadn't been there that morning. He would swear to it, but now there was a banner proclaiming the Traveler welcome to Cashmere. All businesses had signs of welcome, and a few of them had murals painted that depicted a hooded man with a long chain around his neck. The eyes on those paintings seemed to follow Wayne as he drove by, and it gave him the willies. He wasn't sure what the hell was going on, but as he lay in bed and tried to quiet his tired mind, he found himself wondering about what tomorrow would bring. Whatever it was, Wayne supposed he'd have to get there early. If you're just joining us, we are reading The Arrival of the Ragged Traveler. It's a Cashmere story, so have a seat. Join us. Now that we've got the audio back. Wayne arrived at Main Street at 8 o'clock the next morning. He'd expected the street to be deserted, perhaps a scattering of old people who were heading to the diner for coffee, but he was far from the first to arrive for the festivities. He had to jockey for a place to park, and I have just a letter there. I missed a letter. Hang on. And clipped his press badge on it. and clipped his press badge on his lapel in the hopes that it might get him a better spot. He had parked in the parking lot outside the paper, and as he grabbed his chair and began to walk around to Main Street proper, he was jostled by grinning, exciting townspeople. Hey, Diane. Alright, let's get back to it. Well, that's okay, Diane. This is one of those stories you can catch in the middle and still pretty much get it. Okay. He had seen people at carnivals less excited than this. You would have thought the Pope was coming to town. There were lines of ready lawn chairs and... Lines of what? There were lines of metal lawn chairs and cheap plastic Walmart sack. No. I got off the line. There were lines of lawn chairs and cheap Walmart bag chairs everywhere. And there were even kids with pennants sitting on the curb like they were expecting candy. Not in attendance were the cloth shopping bags and plastic Walmart sacks that you usually saw kids holding when they were expecting to get treats. There were no coolers, no grills, and not a single dog in attendance. It all seemed odd to Wayne, like one of those magic eye pictures where once you saw what you were supposed to see, you couldn't unsee it. It was like a puzzle with missing pieces. Excuse me. It was like a puzzle with missing pieces, and when a police officer stopped him, he wasn't sure what to expect. The man's smile was absolutely ear to ear. "Whoa, buddy, where are you heading to?" "Just trying to get a place for the event, officer." He thought it might be Officer Woods, but it was hard to tell with the rictus of a smile stretched across his face. It had to be Wood, had to be, but the man's face looked so different than usual that it was astonishing. Woods was no sourpuss, far from it, but this guy looked like he was having an absolute fit. The officer flicked his press badge, casually fixing those manic eyes on him in a way that made Wayne want to scream. "Your seat has already been assigned, witness. Come, and see him." The officer took Wayne by the arm, just like someone might do with a small child, and led him through the crowd. People parted for them, wishing them a happy day and saying how excited they were to see the traveler. Wayne had been to parades and public events before, but this one was strange, even by Kashmir standards. The crowd parted for them, leading them to a large raised platform where the mayor and many of the town officials were sitting. They all welcomed him, but they also looked a little off, their own mouths charged. I text to type some of this at the gym, so... Their own mouths stained with worry. It was like... It was like that with public officials, though. They were usually worried about things going awry or things ending badly. Wayne didn't know who this ragged traveler was, but he wasn't sure that his presence was something that needed to necessarily be celebrated. Wayne took his seat between an alderman and the head of sanitation and seemed to be awaiting for the show to begin. He fumbled out his tape recorder as he sat, switching it on as the crowd roared around him. He'd never catch anything with all this noise, but he remembered what Tracy had said and sat up anyway. Suddenly, as if a signal had been given, the crowd fell silent. Not quiet, not the murmuring silence of those who await a performance or... Sorry. Not quiet, not the murmuring silence of those who wait for a performance to begin, or who stand around a crime scene, not the hushed whispers of church or the muffled speech you hear at a funeral. This was silence, pure and simple, and it permeated everything that it touched. The noise began subtly, a low, angry sound that seemed to waft up from the end of the street. At first, Wayne thought it was just an air conditioner about to die, or maybe someone's engine in need of a tune-up. Then it began to grow in volume, and Wayne thought it might be a baby who would have just woken up from a nap. It began to grow, and Wayne worried that someone up the street might be in trouble. It sounded like that loud, lonesome scream, like someone who had been injured and now was looking for help. If anyone else heard it, they did not comment. They all stood looking up the road, looking at the source of the noise, and Wayne was a little afraid that that sound might be what he was waiting for. Then, all of a sudden, he saw him. Wayne's mind said him, making the traveler... If I could talk. If you're just joining us, we're reading The Arrival of the Ragged Traveler, which is a Kashmir story. So come join us. Oh, thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. Much appreciated. Let's see. Wayne's mind said him, making the traveler masculine. Wayne's mind said him, making the traveler masculine, but he really couldn't be sure. The creature was draped in a series of ragged black cloaks, and his feet, while covered by those cloaks, slapped the pavement with each. Slapped the pavement with each step. His appearance was off-putting, but it was the wailing that was truly terrible. The ragged traveler wailed out with each breath, as if the mere exercise of existing was something that pained him greatly. The front of his robe was wet, the material clinging to him, and Wayne realized he must be crying beneath the folds of his many cloaks. The people were silent as he passed, but it was their faces that made Wayne shudder. Their faces were filled with such joy that it seemed rapturous. How could anyone look at this creature and feel anything but sadness? This thing was in pain. It was in agony. And when someone put a hand across his chest, Wayne realized he had been about to leap from the podium. "Don't," said a whisper beside him, and Wayne turned to see it was the councilman. "Don't interfere, son. You must not stop his suffering." Oof. Wayne wanted to ask how he could stand this, but then the ragged traveler came even with the podium. Wayne couldn't say how. He couldn't begin to explain why. But when the creature turned to look at him, at Wayne specifically, it was as if all the pain and suffering of his whole life left him. All the unfounded desires, all the unrequited needs, all the unsolved movements he had been forced to live. and all the sadness of every stage of his life had slipped from him like noxious poison. Wayne sagged back in his chair, the feeling of intense ease flowing through him, and suddenly he got it. He understood the smiles, he understood the joy, and as the wailing, screaming creature went up the street, Wayne looked around and saw that others felt the same. They were sitting on the sidewalk. Some lay on the ground as if napping, but all of them looked as if they were the happiest they had ever been. He has taken it all upon himself yet again, the councilman said, and Wayne looked and saw the man lying on the podium as though he had oozed from his chair. "Taken what?" Wayne whispered, his voice incapable of volume at that moment. "He comes once a year and takes our pain, and neck's a little creaky. As he has since time immemorial, he takes it upon himself, all of it, and that is why he travels. He carries it with him, far from us, and then he returns to take it again and again. He is selfless. Ah, but now it seems it's time to pick another." The ragged traveler began to stumble as it came to the end of Main Street, coughing and weaving as the crowd stood in silent anticipation. Finally, he went to his knees and then seemed to collapse in on himself. The cloak riffled in the wind, looking for all the world like a pile of laundry. And then Wayne saw a man who broke from the crowd and approached. Wayne didn't recognize him, but he thought he might be a barista from the local coffee shop. Without a word, the man picked up the cloak, put it on, and loosed a wail of such tremendous sadness that a shudder ran through the crowd. Then, as if he had been born to it, he began to walk. "Ah, another traveler has been chosen," the councilman said, sighing in ecstasy as he rose to go. It took everything Wayne had in him to rise and head for his car as the crowd began to disperse. He had to write it up while it was still fresh. He had to make it perfect so that it would honor the traveler. After all, this creature burdened itself with their pain and suffering, so the least he could do was honor him properly. It wasn't until he got to his car that he remembered the tape recorder and the message that might be there. He flipped it on and heard the traveler's message waft over him. "Welcome to Kashmir, Wayne." Whew! Alrighty. Let me stretch it out a little bit here. Whew! Sorry, I've been doing ACX auditions all day and my neck's a little cranky. Let me load up the next one. Give me like a few minutes to get everything ready, and then we'll move on to the next story. Okay. So, let's move on to some short stories. Let's see here. Okay. First, we're going to hear about someone's daughter and her strange new friend, Faith. So, let me pull up another one of these here, and we will get rolling. Again, this is my daughter's friend, Faith. The house at 27 Magnolia Lane was perfect. I grew up in this little southern town with 5 stoplights and a main street that looked right at a Mayberry. It was very rural, not a Walmart or a Dollar General to be seen, and it had been a 3-block stretch. If I could read today. But it did have a 3-block stretch that I called Plantation Row. They weren't real plantations, just plantation houses. That was what everyone called them, and they were those 2 or 3-story semi-mansions with the sweeping porches and the Corinthian columns that some towns have in the South. They were money pits, at least that's what my mom always said, but I could remember standing outside the gates of those houses and looking up at them with real awe. I wanted to live in a house like that, living like a princess or like Scarlet from Gone with the Wind. I had left for college at 18, but my major in science had never really come together. Instead, after I changed from science to English, and then English to teaching, and then finally to small business management, I landed on something I had never considered. 6 months later, I had my realtor's license, and I found I was pretty good at staging and selling houses. It worked around for a while. Try that again. I worked around for a while, always checking on houses in the town I grew up in. I got married, had a little girl, made huge commissions from houses I sold, and did pretty well for myself. I never quite forgot about those houses, though. And one day, as I perused listings in the area I'd grown up in, I saw something very interesting. Jameson Realty, the only realtor in that little dirt-splat town, was going out of business. Jameson Realty was where my uncle had worked when I was a kid. The town wasn't huge, but the land around it was great for farming. Uncle Chuck usually did pretty well off the acres of farmland he helped people buy, or the old homesteads from people who couldn't hack it. Yeah, that's what it is. I couldn't believe they were closing up, but it also gave me an idea. I called Uncle Chuck, now retired, and asked him to reach out to Mr. Jameson and see if he'd be willing to sell the business to me instead. Sure, Jackie, I bet he would. Try that again. My Uncle Chuck voice needs work. Sure, Jackie, I bet he would. It's just been him and Sarah working there since I retired, and I think that's most of the reason he's closing up. He's getting pretty old, and realty is a young person's game these days. I'll ask around, but I think he'd be more than happy to. And so, 3 weeks later, I signed papers and was officially the owner of Jameson Realty. More importantly, I used the sale as an excuse to sell our 3-bedroom condo and buy Magnolia Crescent, the second largest plantation house on that particular block. It needed some work, but David said it was a project he could work on while I sold houses. We hired movers, packed our bags, and a week later, I was pulling up in front of the huge old turn-of-the-century house, the very one I used to stare at when I was a kid, actually. Whew! Oh, if you guys are just joining us, we are reading My Daughter's Friend, Faith. So, pull up a chair. It's just getting good. Let's see, what do we got going on here? Well, good night, Scarlett. We're glad you came by, though. Oh, and don't avoid the Zaza on my account. I mean, all right, let's see. The house needed some TLC and a lot of renovations and remodeling, but it was comfy, and parts of it were move-in ready. David had gone through David had gone through and hung up Visqueen in the places that he was working in, or that were dangerous for our daughter to wander into, and he set to work as I set to decorating. I couldn't believe that I was here at long last, decorating my dream house. Oh, I skipped a line. Decorating one of the plantation homes that I'd covered. Decorating one of the plantation homes that I had coveted for so long. It was like a dream come true, and Emma, our daughter, seemed happy to fix up her room just the way she liked it. Emma was 4, so it wasn't like she could do more than arrange her toys without help, but she seemed excited by the new room, twice the size of her old room, and the big backyard where we promised her that we'd set up a swing set and a pool. It started out subtly, but I was too busy to notice at first. I was decorating and moving things. I was decorating and moving things by night, and pulling a struggling realty company into the 21st century by day, so my mind was a little busy most of the time. I came upstairs to talk to David about the changes to the master bedroom one afternoon, and heard Emma talking to someone in her room. It was the typical little kid chatter, the kind of thing you would hear on the playground or at daycare. But when I walked past her room, I noticed she was playing alone. It didn't freak me out or anything. Kids sometimes hold whole conversations with just themselves, but when I asked if she'd made an imaginary friend, Emma laughed at me like it was the silliest thing she'd ever heard. "No, Mommy, I'm talking to Faith." I thought that was an odd name for an imaginary friend, but I shook it off and went to find David. The night That night, however, I heard something in the hall that made me sit up. It was faint, barely above a mouse step, but I could hear someone walking around on the upstairs landing. I rolled over to see if it was David creeping into the bathroom. I rolled over to see if it was David creeping into the bathroom, but he was exhausted from his day of remodeling and snoring beside me. That left only one person that could be up, so I peeked out the door to our bedroom and saw that Emma was out of bed. No, I misread that. So I peeked out the doorway to see what Emma was doing out of bed at this hour. I opened the door, expecting to see her searching for the bathroom, but was greeted instead by a light bobbing at the end of the hallway. It was made all the more ghostly because the end of the hallway was separated by a thick sheet of plastic, which made the light look even stranger. It reminded me of the descriptions of St. Elmo's fire or fairy lights, and as I walked slowly towards the partition, it crept slowly, bobbing along behind the murky plastic. And as it did, I could hear someone whispering into the gloom. "Hello," it said, before walking a little farther and saying it again. The voice sounded like Emma, but it wasn't exactly the same either. The voice was a little higher. The voice contained just the twang of an accent that Emma had never had, and when I brushed the plastic aside, I saw her walking down the unsafe hallway and calling out to no one. "Hello," Emma said, though it took me a moment to recognize her. She was dressed in some kind of bedsheet, looking for all the world like a kid in a ghost costume. And as she stumbled along, she would raise her Fisher-Price lantern she'd gotten with her make-believe camping set and call out for someone. "Emma?" I asked, not wanting to startle her. Ugh. "Emma?" I asked, not wanting to startle her, and when she turned around, I had another awful moment where I thought something terrible had happened to her. In the light of that lantern, it looked like her eyes were missing for a moment. She put the lantern down and did this whole body shudder, like a dog shaking off water, before looking at me with confusion. "Mommy? Where am I?" I went to her, hugging her before leading her back to bed. "You're sleepwalking, Emma. You looked like you were trying to find someone. Do you remember who?" "I don't know," she said, looking lost. "In my dream, Faith was calling for me, and I got up to look for her." "Well, tell Faith not to play in the unfinished part of the house, please. It could be dangerous down there." She nodded, still looking half asleep, and I put her to bed and told her good night. That was the first night, but it wasn't the last. It wasn't every night, at least not every night that I could remember, but at least twice a week I would hear Emma walking into the hallway that David was renovating and calling out, "Hello." At first, I would just come and help her go back to bed. Sometimes she knew me, but sometimes she didn't. Sometimes she asked if I was Gladys, sometimes Bridget, but most nights she knew I was Mom. She never went downstairs, something I was afraid of, and she never came into our room or the bathroom. It was always the hallway, and always at night. After a while, I was more curious than concerned. David had fixed it so that most of the repairs were cosmetic, and there were little chance that... excuse me. My bad. We're reading My Daughter's Friend Emma, if you're just joining us, so come on down. Have a seat. I love you guys' conversations while I'm reading. It's great. I like to go back and look afterwards. Now, there was little chance of her hurting herself on a loose board or something. I started following her, seeing where she went, and each of those nighttime excursions would end the same. She would go to the farthest room, helloing all the way, dressed in her bedsheet and holding her lantern. Once she came to the room, she would go to the closet, a dark wood box that was barely big enough for guests' coats, and stand there facing the wall. The first time I found her there, I could only hear her whispering, and when I shook her, she spun around so fast that I had to take a step back. She glared at me through the veil, and for just a moment, I'd thought it might not be Emma. Then she shook herself and asked me where she was. A few days later, I found the drawings. I was cleaning up a room, kids can be pretty messy, when I came upon a stack of drawings. They were piled on the table, Emma working on a new one, and they all depicted two girls playing in various parts of the house. Emma was in a pink dress, something that stayed consistent throughout most of her pictures, and the other girl was in a strange kind of wrapper. It almost looked like she was in a mist, and Emma had taken great pains to draw it, so it almost seemed translucent. "Who's this?" I asked. "That's Faith, Mommy," Emma said. "She's my new friend, remember?" Looking through the pages, it seemed as if Faith and Emma played a lot together. In the backyard, in the kitchen, in Emma's room, and there was even one or two of them in the bathtub. The only one that really stood out was the last one. Emma was standing in a room, a room that looked a lot like the one I often found her in at night. The furniture and the layout was what gave it away, and she was holding a little lantern. Faith was in the closet area, but she appeared to be crying as Emma looked for her with the light. "Emma, why is Faith crying?" I asked. Emma looked away. "'Cause I can't get to her." I looked at her as... Try that again. I looked at her as she was coloring, but despite her eyes sitting glued to the paper, it felt like someone was looking at me. That was the first night the banging started. It was subtle the first time. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of someone hitting the wall farther down the hall. I already knew what it would be when I found it, but before every thunk, the little voice came drifting from the room. It took a while to realize, however, that it wasn't the same hello that she always shouted. Neck's hurting me today. As the door came open, I saw her standing in the dark closet, lit only by her little lantern. I realized she was saying something else then. Thud. Help! Thud. Help! She was smacking her little palm against the wall, and the way she winced made me rush forward to stop her. I didn't know how long she had been doing this, but the slight red tint on the eggshell paint made me think it had been long enough. Emma, stop! You... But then she turned, and there was that look again. It wasn't Emma, I was suddenly very sure of that. And when the strange eyes looked at me in confusion, I wasn't surprised when the voice that came out was different. It was still high, a little girl's voice. But it was wrong. "Bridget, is that you? I can't see. Is it night? Light a lantern. I'm so cold, Bridget. Help, I can't see. I can't see. My hand was very loud in the quiet house when I slapped her, and I immediately felt sorry for it. I'd never hit Emma, not even a slap on the hand when she was a baby, and as her eyes began to well with tears, it was a mercy to see them return to normal. She rubbed her cheek, looking at me in a betrayed way as she began to sob. Mommy, why did you hit me? Why?" I told her I was sorry. I told her she had scared me. I made 1,000 different excuses, but in the end, I bundled her into bed and stayed with her until she was asleep. I fell asleep in the chair beside her bed that night, but it wouldn't be the last time. That day was rough. I sat with Emma a lot, my daughter back to her old self, and when I went to sit with her, I noticed that she was doing more drawings. She didn't pull away from me. She had mostly forgotten about the night before, and I felt a chill as I watched her color. Emma was standing in the bedroom in the one she was working on, and I couldn't help but notice that she was dressed in her shroud, as she sometimes was when she went... Try that one again. As she sometimes was when she went sleepwalking. Let's see. She was holding the lantern in her hand and shining it at someone in the closet, the girl in the black dress that she had said was Faith. "Why is Faith in the closet?" I asked her, cocking my head as she began to fill the closet in with a dark crayon. "That's just where she is," Emma said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. She was filling the closet in with black, and it was hard to watch the little girl disappear under the layers of black. Why are you coloring over her, sweetie?" I asked, trying not to let the terror in my voice come out. "That's what she sees," Emma answered, continuing to color. "What do you mean?" "Faith says it's dark where she is, and when nighttime comes, that's where she goes back to. She doesn't know why it's dark, but it's dark." That night, it wasn't her hand hitting the wall. That night it was a hammer. That night Emma wasn't whispering. "Help!" she half yelled, and this time the thunk woke up my husband, too. How we had managed to sleep through it for this long, I would never understand, but it likely had something to do with all the work. He had always slept like the dead, but he was even more tired after all the renovations lately. He was up in a second, grabbing for the bat beside the bed, and we were both heading down the hall towards the room that Emma seemed to frequent these days. Whew! Get a little stretchy break here. We're reading My Daughter's Friend Emma, or My Daughter's Friend Faith, if you're just joining us. So it's coming to an end pretty soon, so pull up a chair. Whew. See if I've missed anything here. Oh. She was in there again, her lamp on the floor and her usual costume in place. But the hammer was new. She was banging on the wall, yelling for help as she attempted to make a hole in the drywall. She was 4, but her blows were... What I ate is not agreeing with me. She was 4, so her blows weren't making any... Yeah. She was 4. Her blows weren't very hard, but the pool of white powder on the floor, as the drywall bent, looked like fallen snow. David ran to her, taking the hammer and pulling her away from the wall, and as he did, she began to screech and thrash. She bit him. She threw herself back and forth in an attempt to make him let her go. She screamed loud enough that I was sure the neighbors thought we were being murdered, and she kept shouting for him to release her. "I can't see! Let me go! Let me go! Help me! Help me! Won't someone help me? It's so dark! I need help!" I started to tell David to be careful, but that's when I looked back at the wall she had been hitting. She'd made a little hole, nothing bigger than a golf ball, but by the light of the lantern I could see something looking back out. It wasn't an eye, but it was something white, and something far darker than the hole in the middle of it. "David," I whispered, drawing his attention to me. "David, what is that?" David put her down, the thrashing going on as she lay on the floor, and he took up the hammer and gently made the hole a little bigger. I heard his breath hitch as he drew back, and when he told me to take Emma and put her in her room, she didn't fight me. Whatever had been happening was over. When I put her to bed, she seemed to be back to normal, and as I tucked her in, she said something that brought me up short. "Faith says there's light now. She says it isn't dark anymore. She says that Daddy is going to rescue her." I told her to get some sleep, my voice shaking only a little, and went back to see what David was doing. What he was doing, what he had done in fact, was call the police. He told me not to go in there, telling the operator that he needed the police here right away, and when I asked him what had happened, he answered the woman on the phone and me. "Yes, that's right. I'd like to report a body on my property. It appears to be the remains of a child. Yes, no, there's no identifying marks. It's a skeleton, and it's in the wall of my guest room." I was speechless. All this time, all these weeks of living in this house, and there'd been a skeleton in our wall. The police came and took about 1,000 pictures before carefully removing the body. The skeleton was so small and delicate, and before they zipped it in, I couldn't help but notice the remains of a dress clinging to the chest and legs. It was black and gauzy, and it reminded me of the little girl from Emma's picture. They didn't know who she was, but They thought she had been there for a very long time. I did a little digging, and I happened to know that she'd been in that house for 110 years, if she's who I believe she is. Faith Stokes. Faith Stokes, the only daughter of Nellie and David Stokes, was reported missing on February 13th, 1915. Her mother had recently died of scarlet fever, and her father disappeared a month after her death. It was believed that he had taken his daughter with him when he returned to his family home in Kentucky, but there was no record of Faith after that. Whether she too died of some illness or he killed her himself, it's pretty clear that he sealed her in that wall and left town. These were in the public record, and when I brought them to the police, they thanked me and said they'd look into it. I suppose that David Stokes is a little beyond justice. He died in 1930 of heart failure, but it is nice that we could help Faith find some peace. Emma no longer sleepwalks, and she says that Faith doesn't come to play anymore. She's made new friends at preschool, and our backyard is often the site of tea parties and other imaginary adventures. To this day, no one will sleep in that room, and I finally turned it into an office. I haven't seen or heard anything weird in there, but I don't like being in there after dark if I can help it. The hole in the closet was patched, but sometimes... Hang on. The hole in the wall was patched, but sometimes I still imagine I can see that little hole that gave Faith the light she'd been searching for. Okay. That's... Oh, my daughter's friend Faith. Oh. Hope you guys are enjoying the stories. You ain't kidding, CLC. Oh, thank you for the $5, man. I appreciate that. Oh, I need a long hot bath is what I need. Oh, something to soak my neck. Oh, alright. Let's do one more, and then I think that's gonna get us for the night. Give me like just a second here. Okay, good. I was afraid that the ones I had recorded yesterday had gotten eaten by something. Alright, let's see here. Get a new one. I got one more. You guys are getting the cream tonight. These are some big stories. Longtime fans of the show might find a couple of familiar names in this one. This one is called Posthumous Artist. And I hope you guys like it. Okay, let's get rolling. Detective Richard shook his head as he looked over the crime scene. These were the hardest, the ones that made him glad his wife couldn't read his mind. The culprit, Kyle Mann, had come home from work like he always did. He had ridden the number 3 bus home, gotten off at the stop outside his house at around 6:15, walked inside at 6:25. They knew these things thanks to the Ring camera the family had installed. And at 7:10, the neighbors had reported shots fired within the home. It appeared that he had shot his wife, Sylvia Mann, with his 9mm as she cooked dinner. They had found her in the kitchen beside the stove, with a pan of burnt something still smoking slightly. The sound must have spooked his 2 young daughters, Lydia and Chelsea Mann, 6 and 8, and they had attempted to flee. Well, Richard thought as he read on, Lydia had. He looked at the little outline by the base of the stairs, the one that had been done in the white tape the department used, and thought of his own daughter. Lydia was just about Margaret's age, and he supposed she would be forever now. The thought made him sick. So, Kyle had plugged his wife, shot his daughter as she came downstairs, and then he had gone looking for Chelsea. Chelsea, the youngest, had opted to hide. This had prompted a game of hide-and-seek that had lasted for nearly 5 minutes, before Kyle found her in the linen closet and killed her right there on the dusty floor. Richard hoped she hadn't looked up. He really didn't like to think of her asking why her daddy was doing these things before he shuffled her into oblivion. After that, as the blue and whites pulled up and probably shouted for him to come out with his hands up, he'd sat down in his office and used the same gun to end himself as well. Richard stepped over the tape on the stairs and headed up to the office of the and final resting place of Kyle Mann. The officers in the hall parted for him, many of them dipping their heads in respect. Richard, never Dick or Rick like some of the wits he worked with tried to hang on him, had been a detective for 15 years. He was slated to be head of special investigations in a year, would have already if not for the internal politics that seemed to rule the roost of any precinct. He was good, he had an eye for details, and he rarely missed the things that others sometimes struggled with. As he stepped into Kyle's office, however, he froze as his gaze found the painting. Try that one again. He froze as his eyes found the painting hanging above the big bay window there. Kyle had been a man of taste, it would seem. These were no Walmart slab shelves, and no cheap furniture from IKEA either. The desk was mahogany, the bookshelves were the thick kind that made you believe they were homemade, and the chair he had decided to end his career in was an Adirondack, the big, luxurious kind with the high back that made you think you were getting fired if you came in and saw the back of it. The way that chair was positioned, Kyle would have a great view of the picture that hung on the huge window. Kyle would have had a great view of the picture that hung over the huge window that overlooked the well-maintained backyard. Grisly-looking thing, isn't it? Richard turned to find Detective Salvatore standing behind him, grinning like he'd already solved the case. Salvatore had been a detective for less than a year, but he showed a lot of promise. He'd been Richard's understudy for most of that year, and a few months ago the chief had said that it was time to let him fly. Richard respected the kid, but something about what he had said rankled him. For half a second, Richard had wanted to turn and belt the little shit across the face, but he had caught himself just before the impulse could overtake him. Actually, I find it quite beautiful. Talk to me, Salvatore. What have you found here? The two of them came into the study, Richard coming in first, with Salvatore following a step behind. Well, like I put in the initial report, man comes home, plugs his wife, plugs his kids, and then snuffs it in his study. Richard moved around the expensive chair to look at Kyle Mann, or what was left of him. Kyle had apparently decided that his skull was a little too musty and opened a window. It wasn't a big hole, but it had done the job. His jaw was ruined and open, the body sprawled out in death as they so often were. It had been quick, but the chair was likely unsalvageable. He was sure that some vag would consider it a throne when they put it by the side of the road, blood and brains notwithstanding. Ooh, excuse me. Richard tried to take these things in, but his eyes kept being drawn to the picture over the window. It wasn't some grand work of art, far from it. It reminded him of the pictures his mother had collected before she died. Her own death no less inglorious than Mr. Man here. His mother had always been religious, and he had been raised in the backwood Georgia churches of Praise Jesus, the Lord is Mighty. But her own vice had been smoking. At her prime, she would smoke 2 packs a day, but even as her lungs failed her, she'd still manage a pack a day. She would slide the oxygen mask down before taking a puff, always asking Rick, always Rick, never Richard, to light it for her before passing it over. "The devil lies in that first spark," she would say. But the devil had been waiting in a forgotten spark one night as she slept in her easy chair, the cigarette forgotten. Gotta lubricate the machine there. We are reading Posthumous Artist. If you're interested, pull up a chair. Should be great. Let's see what you guys got here. Oh no. Yeah, I know, CLC. We all hate that. Okay, let's continue on. She didn't much care for art, but she liked the 7 or 8 paintings done by a local artist in the hollers of Tiger. Richard could even remember the man. Richard couldn't even remember the man's name, but he did these pictures of hell that always seemed to be too real, too lifelike. They were shadowy, they were dark, and they hinted at brimstone and sulfur fires that burned for 1,000 generations or more. If you looked at those pictures long enough, you would start to see eyes in the gloom. If you looked at them a bit longer, you would pick out the subtle lines of a horn or a mouth or a claw or some such thing. The longer you looked, the more demons you saw. And if you happened to wake up on the couch when the lights were off and the old TV was finally extinguished, you could swear they were moving. Once you saw those demons, you never unsaw them. Once you saw them, they were there forever, and Richard had believed that they would someday come get him one night and take him to the place in those paintings. Then, one night after 10 years... Nope. Then, one night about 10 years ago, his mother's oxygen tank had erupted and bathed his mother, her lung cancer, and those hateful paintings in cleansing fire and sent all of them to whatever waits beyond. This painting was like those, except the medium seemed different. If those had been painted with smoke, then these had been done with blood. It was as if someone had opened an artery. Hang on just a second. My bad, guys. I'm trying to tell the people in the living room they need to keep it down. So, okay, where were we? Where were we? It was as if someone had opened an artery and sprayed their medium on the canvas, making such beautiful images from something so grisly. It was almost as if he could see a woman in that painting, a woman who, as he stared, beckoned to him to free her, a woman who promised earthly delights if he could only... Detective Moore? Richard! Earth to Richard, come in! Earth people need you, Rick. It was the name that shook him out. Only one person had ever been allowed to call him Rick, and she was long gone. Excuse me. Don't call me that. What's with that painting? Salvatore only shrugged. Dunno. Can't exactly ask him either, can we? Richard shook his head, as much to negate the statement as to clear it. Any idea why he did this? Richard asked, looking around for anything they might have missed. Salvatore shook his head. That's why I called you in. Can't figure out what this is, but I was hoping for more insight than your critique on the artwork. Richard sighed, looking around the office. Then let's get started. Detective Richard sat at his desk, staring at the wall as he tried to make sense of it. Kyle Mann had no particular reason to kill his family and then himself, none that anyone could find. He was a partner at his law firm. He was getting ready to win the biggest case of his career, and he and his family had just bought tickets on a 2-week cruise after the case wrapped up. He took the bus because it let him talk to the people and hand out business cards. He had nothing else. Allergy meds are starting to kick out. He had nothing outstanding, debt-wise, besides his mortgage, which was taken care of every month like clockwork. He wasn't under any undue stress, so it seemed, and his life appeared to be going pretty well. The firm he worked for said he hadn't seemed different, maybe a little distracted, but anyone would be with a caseload like he had. Richard wasn't thinking about the case as much as he should have been, however. What he was thinking about was that painting. As he stared at the wall, he could see the painting hanging there. It was so real that he imagined he could almost reach out and touch it. The woman was still there, calling to him, begging him to release her. But Richard didn't know how. Richard didn't understand why he kept going back to that picture. And when someone came in and bumped his desk, he jumped like he'd been using his work computer for porn or something. Figured you'd have gone home by now, Salvatore said, pulling up a chair next to his desk. Richard snorted. Someone's got to pull your ass out of the fire. Found anything useful? Salvatore gave him a weird look. Not about Mann, but I may have something else. You remember the Triddle case about 8 months ago? Richard thought for a moment before slowly nodding. Yeah, art dealer. He killed himself, didn't he? Correct, Salvatore said. I only thought of it because it was one of my first cases. They suspected foul play, remember, because there were rumors he was fencing stolen art. Well, I also remember that painting we saw in Mann's office. He pulled a picture out of a file folder he had tossed onto his desk. Sure enough, there it was. It was hanging in the art dealer's office, in a place of prominence, very close to where the little man had ended his art-dealing career. Do you suspect that someone might be killing the people who own that picture? Salvatore shrugged. No, but it's a hell of a coincidence. Triddle didn't have a family, but he did have a cat. Right before he ended himself, he broke its neck and left it in the adjoining office. I remember the landlady going on and on about how sad it was. She said he had loved that cat. He had raised it since he found it in the dumpster out behind the office when it was a kitten, and she couldn't see him hurting it. Kinda lends some credence to someone else having done it, Richard speculated. If someone did, then they covered their tracks well. The only person in that office was Triddle, and Mann is the only one with prints on the gun and with witnesses to say that he was the only one in or out. Richard sighed, getting up as he tried to shake off the phantom painting that had been hanging on the wall across from him. Did we take that painting into evidence? Salvatore looked at some notes and shook his head. No, didn't seem pertinent at the time. Let's bring it in and bag it as evidence, just to be safe. You said there might be a link, so Let's cover our bases. I'm gonna head home for the night. It's been a hell of a day. Sleep well, boss. I'll go get it personally and put it into evidence, though I'm not sure what it's evidence of. Richard didn't either, but he knew he would feel better if it were here at the station. He would feel better if he was able to touch it and look at it and study it a little better, too. Ugh, stretch time. Oh, goodness. Ugh. You got that right, Blondie. It's those Joshes you gotta worry about. Everybody knows that. Hang on. Check. Sometimes when I move it, the cord gets a little loose. Okay, let's continue on with the story about Rick and his case. Richard slumped in his desk the next day. The coffee wasn't doing it for him today, and he had slept badly. He had dreamed about that painting, the woman inside begging him to help her. She had cried out to him again and again, begging for his help. But he couldn't say how he was supposed to help. He would wake up and see that painting across from his bed, sitting on the open piece of wall and staring at him. "Morning, boss," Salvatore said, coming to take up the seat from the night before and looking well rested for someone who had likely gotten to bed after... For someone who had likely gotten to bed around midnight. "Anything new?" Richard barked, not even looking up. "Nothing on man. The chief has decided that's an open and shut case, but I have found something new about that painting, if you're interested." Richard shrugged. "I got time, I guess." What he really wanted was a nap, but he didn't see that happening. Subconsciously, what he also wanted was to go down to evidence and look at that painting. Even from here, he could hear it calling to him. That painting, called The Mind of an Artist, was the last known work of Roland Priest. It was supposed to be in police custody, but it disappeared about 4 years ago from lockup. Triddle and Mann are not the only two odd murders it's been at the scene of, either. In 4 years, it's been circulating. It's been photographed in the background of at least 3 other murders that have taken place under strange circumstances. In 2022, Frank Joffus killed his daughter, her babysitter, and then himself. Joffus's ex-wife said that he'd been acting strangely, but the statement never went anywhere. In February of 2023, Glenda Moffat killed herself and her elderly mother one evening. Hang on. Killed herself and her if I could read today. Killed herself and her elderly mother one evening. Witnesses said they had always been close, and they couldn't imagine why she would do such a thing like that. Like in the Triddle case, she poisoned her mother's 4 cats, too, so there's that. And in December of 2023, Hadrian Moe killed his boyfriend and their dog before killing himself as well. Their neighbors said that Marcus Smith, the boyfriend in question, had confided to some of them that Hadrian had been very quiet lately, and that he'd taken to staying in the second bedroom, his art studio, for days on end, with some painting that he had recently purchased. Nose is super itchy tonight. Richard was trying to put it all together, but his mind kept slipping back to that painting. The painting, the painting, the goddamn painting. "What's your point?" Richard asked, and Salvatore looked at him like he was losing it. "My point is that you were right. The painting does need to be in police custody. It's been at the scene of at least 5 deaths. That can't be a coincidence. We need to..." But Richard was standing up. "The only thing I need to do is get a nap. I'm not thinking straight today. If the chief says that the Mann case is closed, then it's closed. I'm sure you have other cases to go get to." Salvatore watched him leave, but Richard wasn't going home. He went down to evidence lockup, flashed his badge, and went to check on the evidence for the Mann case. "I thought that case was closed," the evidence sergeant said, but Richard just shrugged. "I just need to look at something. Some evidence wasn't adding up." He sat in the evidence room and held the picture in the bag, looking at it. It was so beautiful, so very alive, and it took every ounce of control not to rip it from the bag. It called to him. It begged him to free it, but he didn't dare. The woman inside was so small, so fragile, and when she laid her hand against the outside of the picture, Richard felt himself grow weak. "You know what must be done, Rick." He nearly dropped it. No one had called him Rick. No one had been allowed to since his mother died. "You know what must be done." He did. He did know. His phone buzzed and Try that again. His phone buzzed, and he nearly didn't pick it up. Something in him, though, reminded him that he still had responsibilities, that he needed to remain as normal as possible until the time came. Detective Moore. "Richard!" It was Salvatore, not a surprise. "Richard, the painting is gone." "Is it?" Richard asked, putting the phone against his ear as he got the angle just right. "Do they know how?" There was silence on the other end for a moment, and Richard was worried he had lost the connection before Salvatore came back. No, they don't. Listen, Richard, this painting may not just be evidence." Richard stopped, the nail poised to accept his offering. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this painting may somehow be causing the incidents." Richard set the painting on the nail, smiling as it hung lovingly from the spot right across from his bed. "That's a bold claim, Salvatore. Do you have any proof?" Richard could hear street sounds in the background, the sound of a car being driven. It took some doing, but it seems it's been linked to about 14 murders since its... It took some doing, but it seems it's been linked to 14 murders since its disappearance. Well, not linked, but present at them. I think it's got something spooky going on, and now it's missing again. Richard took a seat, admiring his handiwork. "And you called to tell me all that?" "No," Salvatore said. "I called to ask you why you did it." Richard smiled. "The woman in the painting needs to be freed, Detective Salvatore. She needs to be free, and the only way to do it is with blood. If it didn't work for the last 14, what makes you think it'll work now? Come on, Richard, don't do anything stupid." "I can assume that you're coming to my house," Richard said, taking the gun out of the holster in the side of his chair and working the slide. "Richard, Jan and Margaret didn't do anything to deserve this. Just let them go." "Drive fast, Salvatore. If you do, you might be in time to save one of them." "Rick!" But Richard hung up the phone. He had more important things to do. Salvatore was the first one on the scene. Janice and Margaret were already dead. He found them downstairs. They'd been done in the kitchen, dinner slowly burning in the stove. He had gotten at least one of them unaware, but Margaret looked like she had died screaming. He heard the shot and looked to the ceiling. He already knew what he'd find. Richard was dead. Single shot to the head. Salvatore called it in, but he took that painting and burned it before anyone got there. He could hear it calling to him the whole time, but Salvatore knew the trick and wouldn't be drawn in. Roland DePriest wasn't going to kill anyone else, not in death, and Detective Salvatore intended to make sure of it. Detective Richard Moore and his family would be the last of his little art pieces. Alright, that's it. That's all you get. Oh, hey Peg, I'm glad you could make it. Whew, it's been quite a live stream. We've gone for almost 3 hours. Oh, goodness. Well, I do hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Man, we did like almost 5 stories tonight. That's wild. We'll have to do it again next week when I do the majority of my recording for you guys. So, I hope you guys enjoyed your night, and I hope you have a wonderful and safe weekend. Until next time, this is Dr. Plague, signing off. Oh, check the community for that writing, contest tab that I'm going to put up after I go. So, be sure to keep an eye out for that. And be sure to keep an eye out for the Dollar General Beyond series, which should be on Amazon very soon. But, anyway, good night, everybody. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.